Determine whether the following series converges or diverges, and if it converges, find its sum. The series starts off as 1 over pi squared. The second term is minus 3e over pi to the fourth. And then we have 9e squared over pi to the sixth and minus 27e cubed over pi to the eighth. So we have to figure out what's going on with this series. Does it converge or diverge? And we have to recognize it's a geometric series. Well, how do we recognize that? As you go from one term to the next, we are being multiplied by a single quantity. And so that quantity is called R. And so we find it by figuring out what does the numerator get multiplied by and what does the denominator get multiplied by. And so the numerator is easy enough to figure out. It gets multiplied by negative 3e. Denominator has powers of pi going up in order by 2. So denominator would be multiplied by pi squared. And just double check that it stays that throughout the rest of the way. The power on e goes up by 1, so we're multiplying by negative 3e again. The positive becomes, it's positive because it was a negative 3e, and a negative 3e give you a 9e squared. And so yeah, we have it, the R is negative 3e over pi squared. The question is then, for this particular value of R, is it greater than 1 or less than 1 in absolute value? To do it, let's put approximately what E is. So E is approximately 2.71. Pi is approximately 3.14. Our job is to figure out if this is less than 1. What we have to do is compare the numerator to the denominator. If I square something larger than 3, how does that compare to negative 3 times 2.71? And so the denominator is about 9, while the numerator is about 6 or 7. Maybe even 8. But definitely not 9 though. And so, because of that, denominator being larger than the numerator, then in turn the whole fraction is less than 1. Then we just throw the absolute value around it because we need to know where we fall at. And it turns out that in order for convergence we fall between negative 1 and 1. It turns out that this guy here ends up somewhere right about here. Negative 3e over pi squared. So we converge. Great. Now that we know we converge, it's a matter of finding the sum. What do we converge to? And it always turns out that you converge to a sum that is your first term divided by 1 minus your ratio. The first term is 1 over pi squared, and the ratio is negative 3e over pi squared. So if we plug into the formula, we get 1 over pi squared divided by 1 minus that ratio. This double minus becomes a plus, and so we end up with simplifying this by multiplying by pi squared to cancel out. When we distribute across the denominator, we'll have pi squared plus 3e. For a final answer of 1 over pi squared plus 3e as what the sum is. If you add up those infinitely many terms, you're guaranteed that it will sum to 1 over pi squared plus 3e.